Thank you. I don't think I've ever gotten a welcome like that before. Thank you so much. Tongue in cheek, to be sure. So, they say that working with teenagers keeps you young. I don't know so much about that, but I decided to make a foray into social media. You've probably heard of that, social media. I decided to make a foray into social media to keep myself in touch with the younger generation. So I opened a Twitter account, and every day at dawn, I post a tweet. I opened a Tumblr account so that I'd have a place to put all my gymnastics pictures. I decided to start a Flickr account, but the lighting was too inconsistent. It couldn't make it work. Then I went for Pandora and opened a Pandora account, but my computer crashed and everything went haywire all at once. Once I got my computer working again, I found out that I could post my colonoscopy video on YouTube. Seriously. I thank you all for being here, and in honor of your patience and attention, I decided I would offer you a short lecture on education, just to liven up the evening. Seriously. Most of what we call education in this country boils down to 7 words. Kid enters classroom, teacher teaches, kid leaves. 7 words. That's basically what we call education. Kid enters classroom, teacher teaches, kid leaves. Our nation, our federal government, spends, what is my figure here, $70 billion a year. $70 billion a year on those 7 words. And that doesn't count all the local dollars, the state dollars, and the private dollars that go into education. I do not believe we're getting a reasonable return on our investment, given the world that we're in today. And I don't think we will get a reasonable return on that investment as long as we keep trying to measure the same things we're measuring. It's not the measurements that are flawed, it's what we're trying to measure that is lacking. The 7-word education system basically boils down to a process of accretion. We're adding facts. You go in, you collect some facts, you walk out with more facts than you had before. The word is accretion, and it describes the process by which coral reefs are formed. They accrete. It also describes the process by which stalagmites are formed over time. Accretion. It works out great underwater and in caves, but it is totally and entirely inadequate for what we need to be providing young people in the 21st century. We are not going to survive to the end of the 21st century if that's all we're doing for education. We've got to do something different. So it's not that information is unimportant. I'm not advocating for an education that lacks an information base. Kids need information. But in an era where information is ubiquitous, we need to move beyond accretion. The purpose of education needs to change, and for tonight I'd like to offer you 3, not a conclusive list, but 3 things that I think we might incorporate more into education in a way to address current issues. Here they are. First one, work ethic. We all know the value of a work ethic. We know it when we see it. We respect it when we see it. I've never heard anybody say, oh, you're working. You'd be better off hanging out and being lazy. So we recognize the value, but schools do not teach it. And I think most of us would probably agree that work ethic in general is declining in our society. So I think it's time to start looking at work ethic. How can we teach that and incorporate that? And I want to tell you a short story. I had a teenager not long ago, and I gave the kid a broom. And I said, could you please go sweep that room? The Kid was back less than a minute later. Okay, I swept the room. Like, yeah, let's go look at that room. And I went, and sure enough, there was still crud all over the floor. And I said, did you tell me you swept this room? He's like, oh yeah, I swept. Well, it turns out the word sweep has two definitions. One is to hold a broom and move it back and forth. The other definition is to clean using a broom. So this kid, yes, he swept. He held the broom and moved it back and forth. Okay, I swept. But he didn't clean the room. So by the time he was done, he had cleaned the room and he had learned something about work ethic. I think these kids here tonight are evidence of an emphasis on work ethic, and they have shown it, and they've done a marvelous job with it. Number 2, controlling emotions. I ask kids oftentimes, are you in control of your emotions? Can you choose how you want to feel at a given time? Or are your emotions just things that happen to you? Do they just kind of arrive like the mail or the email? Or do you choose them? Or is it somewhere in between? Well, obviously there's a range. But what I've found is that kids who can identify the ability to select their own emotions, to choose their own experience, are far more capable kids. And we've also seen that over time, in our school, kids are choosing more and more, becoming more and more able to choose their own feelings and emotions and determine their own experience. Schools can teach this. Mostly they don't. One little story about that, there's some research that's come out recently where there's a posture like this. What does that mean to you? Yeah, that's a posture of achievement, of accomplishment, of pride. Okay? Recent research has shown that if you adopt that physical posture before a job interview, you are statistically significantly more likely to be hired. Regardless of your emotion, if you occupy this physical posture, and they found this to be true across cultures, so it's not just a Western thing. Across cultures, this posture feeds a sense of success that brings measurable results. So we have control, we have control over much more of our experience than we give ourselves credit for, and we can be teaching this. Mostly we're not. These kids, again, are accomplished. They have done a lot. They've come through a lot. They've hung in there. They put up with me. They're very accomplished people. The third thing I suggest that I think we might want to emphasize more in education is what I call inventiveness. As the rate of change in our world speeds up, success is not going to go to the people that can simply repeat information they learned a while ago. That is becoming a less and less critical indicator of success. It's inadequate. What's needed is the ability to take a brand new situation for which you don't have an answer and come up with working answers. That's what we're called upon to do now. Mostly, schools teach compliance. Get the information, give back the information. Most schools are not emphasizing this inventiveness quality that I think is really essential to our society's survival. So these kids have been deeply inventive. There's some really cool sculptures over there. If you didn't have a chance to check them out, there's some really cool sculptures that have taken place. You saw pictures of bridge building. A really awesome green playhouse exists now where one didn't before. Kids have been creating, they've been building. And in another example of inventiveness, they're all writing self-assessments. There might be some very inventive stuff on those self-assessments. But we encourage this in kids. So the world is really calling us to new purposes. Our education systems are slow to change. Fortunately, we're all gathered here because there is a private sector, independent thing happening, and I take little credit for it, but I work with awesome faculty that make this stuff happen, that these critical things for our current world and our future are being taught, are being delivered and brought to the kids. And I think it's great to see that, that empowerment, that emotional empowerment, that inventiveness, that work ethic, to see those things come to fruition in these kids is pretty important, and I think transformational. I do this work. What I bring to my work is a lot of tenacity in sticking with it to see these kids get to that place where they can actually embody these principles and they do a marvelous job at it, and then I get a real feeling of joy and warm fuzzies. To do this, we're all called upon to be a part. It's not something that happens in isolation. Our teachers can't do what they do without tons and tons of support. The parents in this room, you know we call upon you all the time to be involved, to help out, to roll up your sleeve, to give money, to come to work parties, to put in time. Your role of this is really huge, and I can't thank you enough for what you do to make this possible. It's a pretty darn amazing ride. And so together, we're making something happen that's far more than 7 words. Kid enters classroom, and City Hall, and Alpine Trail, and Buddhist temple, and museum, and orphanage, and subway station, and factory, and nursing home, and courtroom, and beach, and machine shop. We are transforming the accretion model of an obsolete education into a transformative model that is equipping these kids to help us address the needs of tomorrow. And I happen to know that the weather in that world of tomorrow is going to be awesome because God posted it on Facebook. Thank you.